Hello, thank you very much for clicking play on watching this video. In this video, I'm going to give advice on a problem that comes up relatively frequently. It's not a nice one, and it's always a contentious one. Quite often, the tenant wants the landlord to do something about it, and the landlord thinks it's a tenant's problem. And depending on the circumstances, either could be correct. So what I'm going to talk about today is mold and mildew, and in particular condensation. Okay, so first of all, this video mainly aimed at tenants. Obviously, it's normally tenants either reporting the problem or we might be finding the problem in a property when we do one of our routine visits if it's a property that we manage. Okay. Now, first of all, I really want to sympathise as well. This is not a particularly nice problem. Luckily for us, in most of our properties, well, in all of the properties where this is reported, we don't really have severe cases of this. However, nonetheless, it's not particularly pleasant, and it does have some health risks as well. Mildew and mould can pose a risk to health and bronchial problems and so on, and we're really, really aware of that. So we want to help tenants sort out this problem. But the problem is a landlord will say, it's probably the way the tenant's living in the property. And a tenant will say it's the way the property is designed, or the way the property or the building or the flat or the house or whatever is built. Okay, so it always becomes a bit of a contentious point. And from our point of view, as usual, we want to keep people happy. We want landlords happy. We want tenants happy. So we want to do our best to help mediate, find solutions, whatever it might be. Okay, so first of all, I don't want this video to be very long and protracted because I know you're all busy. I'll have probably directed tenants to watch this video to get a bit of advice. So I'll keep this fairly short, and I do have extra information on my website which I'll direct you to as well. Okay, but what are the underlying causes of mildew and mould? Well, mildew and mould like to grow in a moist environment. They like to grow on walls that are wet. Okay, now what's the causes of wet walls in a house? When I say wet, I don't necessarily mean dripping with water, just cold enough to have a light layer of condensation on. You might not even notice it yourself, but moisture in the air is going to be a factor. A cold surface as well, so you'll normally get mold and mildew building up on an external wall, so a wall that has got the outside world is on the other side of that wall. You don't tend to get it on your internal walls, so the walls that are between bedrooms, or if you lived in a terraced house or a semi-detached house, the walls between the houses. The reason for that is those walls tend to be warmer because they're heated and so on both sides, whereas a external wall, you've got a cold side, i.e. the outside world. So when you get a cold wall and you've got moisture in the air, that moisture in the air condenses on the cold wall and creates droplets of water. Okay, and those droplets of water then create the environment that the mold and mildew can grow in. And then to add to that, the other thing that is not going to help is a lack of ventilation, so a lack of movement of air around the house, okay, or around the flat or around the building or whatever it might be. Okay, so that's the underlying causes. Once we've worked that out, we then need to work out how to get rid of the moisture, how to warm up the surface if we can, and how we can create extra ventilation. And these are all things that the occupant can do. So this is one of those reasons why landlords will say, oh, it's a tenant's problem, and so on. And that's kind of understandable. So to help, I provided on my website, go to our website, www.proudhouseproperty.co.uk, click on the link to downloads, and on the downloads page you will find lots of PDFs, information download sheets, such as this one here. And I've got one entitled Mildew, Mould and Damp. This is part 2. Part 1 is a more of a general overview of damp, not just condensation, but rising damp and penetrating damp and so on. But on this information sheet, I specifically go into mold and mildew, etc. So I'm just going to read from this information sheet as well. So you've got I read exactly the information that you can download yourself. So first problem, poor ventilation in the home. You must ventilate your home. So keep the extractor fans on if they're fitted in the bathrooms and in the kitchen. Use them. They are designed to not just get rid of smells after someone's been to the lavatory. They're designed to move and remove moisture-laden air out of the house, okay, or out of the flat. So use them. Don't turn them off by those isolator switches that are normally above the door outside the bathroom. Keep your fan working, okay. If you don't have any extractor fans fitted, perhaps you're living in an older property, then that's when a landlord, or we might ask the landlord, hey, can you consider putting in an extractor fan, please? Because that would really help with this mold condensation issue and so on. Another problem, drying clothes indoors, okay? I know sometimes people don't have a garden or it's not good weather to dry clothes outside, and you may not have a tumble dryer, okay? So drying clothes indoors is not an uncommon thing. But if you think about it, all the moisture that's in those clothes, when it dries out, it goes into the air. And if you're doing that on a very regular basis with a lot of clothes and you're keeping all the windows closed, then that moisture is just going to stay in the house, and it will then condense on the cold walls. Okay, so again, not good. Keeping doors closed. This might seem like a really simple, innocent thing. Who knew? But the problem we have, it quite often happens with spare rooms in, say, larger houses. You might have a spare bedroom in a fourth bedroom or something that doesn't get used very frequently. So you use it as a storeroom. You close the door, and you don't go in there for several days or possibly even weeks. And you might even think, well, the spare room's not being used, I'm going to close the radiator down, okay? So then you've created a cold room, you've created a room where the air is stagnating because the door's closed and no one's going in there, okay? And there's no ventilation, okay? And that can then become the sort of place where you might get condensation and mold and mildew building up, okay? So even though you might not use the rooms very much, make sure that you've got your doors open to rooms, windows open, vents open, and so on. And that's another thing as well. In modern windows, in PVC windows, you often have one of those little things at the top of the window. You can slide it left and right. That's called a trickle vent. And the idea of that is it will allow a slow, trickle, as the name suggests, a slow ventilation, a rate of airflow through the windows, and just keep the air in the room healthy to prevent these kinds of problems building up. So don't close down all the trickle vents, okay? I know why people do it, because they think, well, I'm letting valuable heating out of the house. You are. I sympathise with that. I understand that, and energy costs are not, they're pretty significant these days. But on the other hand, they are there for a reason. They are part of the building regulations, actually, that those trickle vents are put in there. So they are important, okay? So please use them and don't keep them all closed. And then another one, a really common problem that we have with tenants is, and I mentioned it earlier with heating costs and energy bills, please heat your homes, okay? It's so tempting to just perhaps heat the room that you use, perhaps the lounge and perhaps the bedroom, and turn all the radiators down in the rooms that you don't use. But the problem with that is, as we've discussed, is the temperature in the room is going to drop, the walls are going to get cold, the water in the air is going to condense out, and so on, okay? So you've got to keep the house heated. And that does also mean a heating routine, okay? So please, even though you might be at work or your family are out and so on, a regular routine where you're heating the home, say, twice a day, or possibly even the heating on a low level all of the time, okay? It's a much more efficient way of heating the home and will really, really help reduce some of these problems with condensation, mold and mildew. Finally, last one on the list here of these kind of common problems that we find is, believe it or not, furniture. If you've got a large wardrobe, a large piece of furniture, and you've got it up against the wall, then the air in that gap behind that piece of furniture, the air in that gap stagnates. And you'll find that you will get, again, a mildew and mold problem possibly building up behind furniture. Again, especially common in spare rooms or rooms that are used for storage. People pile stuff high and they close the door. And then that's again, one of those rooms where you've created or you've prevented, a lack of airflow and a lack of ventilation. And then these problems start to build up. So I'm going to summarise there. We're nearly at 10 minutes, so my apologies for that. If you are living in a modern home and you've got extractor fans fitted and you've got trickle vents and so on, if you've got a mold and mildew problem, I hate to say it, guys, but for our tenants, the problem is almost certainly going to be an occupancy problem. Okay, you need to look at how you're living in the home, you need to look at how you're heating it and how you're ventilating and so on. If you're living in an older home and you've got a problem with mold and mildew, you may find that things like extractor fans are not fitted and you need them. You may find that perhaps you've had UPVC double glazed windows retrofitted into the property, and it's closed down all of the natural ventilation that old property once used to have. Okay, and then you get a mold and mildew problem. Okay, so older properties can require a bit more of a survey and a bit more of an assessment as to what the problem might be. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay, we're here to help, but first of all, something that's better than us helping you is you helping yourself. So tenants, go to our website, take a look at those information download sheets, and just have a think about what you can do to help yourself. And if you need any further advice, then give me a shout. You can email me, repairs@proudhouseproperty.co.uk for maintenance type problems. If you've got a general query about your tenancy, then it's office@proudhouseproperty.co.uk, or call us 01935 388 456. Okay, thanks very much. Take care. Speak soon.